Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and just now looking for this background, I realized that we have not played the Colts since we were the Washington football team or the Commanders. So I decided to go all the way back with a throwback. But yeah, man, today I'm coming with a big Chase Young update. At first, people originally thought that it may have been a setback, but JP Finlay came out and gave an update basically saying that it's quite likely, that it is pretty likely that Chase Young will start practicing next week. Does that mean he plays next week against the Vikings or even the Eagles after that, or maybe even the Texans after that? Not exactly. Once he returns, he has 21 days to get back onto the active roster and be a part of the team. So if he starts practicing next week, we should at the very least see him by the Houston Texans or Falcons game, which I think is none of these teams are easy on our schedule, but that should be a nice little confidence booster for Chase Young. I mean, going against the Eagles O-line, arguably the best in the NFL, versus going against the Texans O-line and the Falcons O-line. Big difference. Give him a nice little decent O-line rather than a great one to kind of build up your confidence, like, yeah, man, I still got it type of thing. But of course, we got to dive into his entire situation. I'm also going to give a full injury update for the Commanders versus Colts matchup. So I'm going to give both sides, the Commander side and the Colts side, who didn't participate, who participated in a limited fashion, who fully participated, who looks like they'll probably end up playing this Sunday. Again, we played them at 4:25 p.m. Make sure you pull up while I'm live streaming that play-by-play analysis and all of that. And then also, as you see in the title, the Commanders are continuing talks with teams about a trade for cornerback William Jackson. So we're going to talk about that, how much money we would save, and what he could possibly go for right now. And why, if you're going to trade him, trading them right before the trade deadline, which is November 1st, is the best time to do it. This is the time. If you plan on trading him, if he's not going to be here long term, trade him before November 1st. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, like I already said, make sure you pull up every Sunday for the play-by-play analysis and breakdown of every Commanders regular season game. And again, I'm going to speak it into existence every postseason game as well. I'm breaking down everything that's going on, D-line, O-line, linebackers, receivers, everything, play by play. And of course, we're always gonna laugh. Winning or losing, we're gonna laugh. We get to talking about really anything, even stuff outside of sports. So man, make sure y'all pull up just to have some fun. Again, from 4:25 p.m. till the game ends, which will be around like 8 p.m. And make sure y'all pull back up every week for the same thing, even if it's a Monday game, a Thursday game, whatever. And without further ado, let's get it. All right, so let's go ahead and start with William Jackson. Well, Jordan Schultz tweeted out, Commanders continuing talks with teams about a trade for cornerback William Jackson III. Sources tell at The Score. Jackson signed a 3-year, $42 million contract before the 2021 season. Although we don't see a ton of in-division trades, I wouldn't rule out the Cowboys after the Jordan Lewis injury, which is really interesting. Before we even dive into the William Jackson situation, do y'all honestly think it's possible that we would do a trade with the Cowboys to give them a true #1 corner? In my opinion, I just feel like this system was really bad for him. I hate how much of a scapegoat William Jackson has become for this team, where everybody's just basically acting like he was all of our defensive problems. Now, it's not necessarily a coincidence that ever since he stopped playing, our defense has been a little bit better, but at the same time, I just felt like we were trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Bring in a primarily man cover corner and ask him to play mostly zone first of all, and then occasionally match coverage. Match coverage is like the most difficult mental coverage that there is to even try to run as a corner. Takes so much communication and years of practice, and you could just tell that it's just not for him. Now, granted, you would hope with all of that athleticism and length, I mean, he has every physical trait you could ask for. You would hope that he could learn how to do that, but it's just not him. All he wants to do is to be matched up against the opponent's best receiver and follow him all throughout the game. I still think he can do that pretty well. Granted, this year, even some man coverage moments, he slipped up. He would be there step for step, but then there were times where he would just randomly pull on their waist, tug at their jersey for absolutely no reason. You're literally there. Just put a hand up and bat the ball down. You did the first 90% of the play correctly, and then the last 10% you just do like a random pass interference for no reason. I feel like if he can correct that, he still can be a true #1 corner. Technically, in today's NFL, it's hard to be a true lockdown on an island corner, just the way the rules are set up. Receivers always get the benefit of the doubt, but I still feel like William Jackson has it in him. I would not be surprised at all, which brings me back to my original point, that if we trade William Jackson to the Cowboys, he'll end up playing very well for those guys, especially with that pass rush led by Micah Parsons. Boy, William Jackson will be having a field day. He'll probably become a Pro Bowler in that defense. So I do feel sorry for him, but it just apparently it's not working out. Now, granted, he came out and said recently that he actually isn't seeking a trade and he didn't request a trade, but it looks like that was probably a lie. I believe he did as well. I believe the reports that he feels like he's not being used correctly, because guess what? He's not being used correctly. Now, granted, Jack Del Rio and this defense has a rhythm going. They're actually playing very well, and this is without quite a few key players, including Chase Young, who's going to bring some explosion when he comes back. Our defense has mostly been suffocating, but I really hope we can turn into a dominant turnover causing defense. That's the last step to this defense becoming elite. But at this point for us, not having William Jackson on the field is a normal thing. We've gone on a win streak since he's been gone. And of course, there's been several factors involved in that: muff punts, receivers dropping passes from the other teams. There's a little bit of luck involved, but overall our defense has been playing lights out, and our offense is starting to improve now that Taylor Heineke's at the quarterback. At least second half Taylor Heineke. We need to get that Heineke all season. But my point is, trading away William Jackson won't really affect this team because he hasn't played the past couple of weeks anyway. I mean, you can't really miss what you haven't had, honestly. And who knows what type of leverage we have. I'm thinking, from what I've heard from reports around the league and just looking at other teams, reporters and analysts talking about William Jackson, because I don't want to go from like a commander source. A commander source is going to obviously make it higher than what everybody else feels like it is. So I've been trying to look at other teams and how they feel, and some people feel like he could go potentially for like a round 3 pick, which I think is pretty straight. I mean, could you potentially draft the replacement for William Jackson in the 3rd round? Technically, that's when we drafted Benjamin St-Juste. So if we can get a 3rd round pick for him, I'd take it. I mean, right now, teams are desperate for players like William Jackson and Daron Payne. I already did a full video breaking down Daron Payne, but the logic remains, same exact logic. A veteran's trade value is at its highest right before the trade deadline, because Super Bowl contender teams are far more desperate right now to get their hands on a player like a Daron Payne, who I already talked about, but specifically in this video, a William Jackson. Again, a true #1 corner still, in my opinion. I just felt like it wasn't a good fit here, but I feel like he can go somewhere else and still do what he has to do, and did what he did for the Bengals back in the day, just a couple of years ago. And at times he looked really good for us. The second half of last season, he looked like we were finally getting out of him what we wanted out of him. If a team goes back and looks at that tape and decide, man, we could really use that, this is the best time to get the most out of these guys. We have a little bit more leverage right now, because granted, in the off season, even if a team feels like they have a stacked roster, like, oh yeah, let's get it, first of all, who knows what's going to happen? You don't know if injuries are going to happen. And even on top of that, if you feel like your roster is so stacked, you don't necessarily feel like you may even need a William Jackson. But by the time we're going into week 8 of the regular season, and we have a far clearer picture on who are actual true contenders and who are pretenders right now, and now you can truly evaluate to see what your team looks like, you know, your weaknesses and strengths, and maybe you've gotten hit with a couple of injuries like the Cowboys losing Jordan Lewis. Teams are looking at William Jackson like, man, if we just had him, just that's the last missing piece. We get a corner that can just truly man up on an island with people, even if it's not the #1 receiver, just any receiver in the NFL right now. If we could just put him out there with rare safety help and not have to worry about him, you know how much that takes our defense and our team to another level. It makes us even more of a Super Bowl contender than we already are. I mean, there's some teams out there that's probably looking at William Jackson like the last missing piece to potentially get in the ring. And teams don't necessarily look within and view their own team like that until we get to this point. It's hard to do that in the offseason because, again, anything can happen. You could just fall flat on your face as soon as the season starts, even though you do feel like you have a stacked roster. Things can happen. The Giants have only lost 1 game this season. The Seahawks have the best record record in the NFC West, I believe. Like, anything can happen. You never know. But now that we're almost halfway through the season, you have a better idea of what you need and what you don't need. There's some teams out there that's a William Jackson away, or at least feel like they're a William Jackson away from being a true Super Bowl contender, and they'd be willing to give up more right now than they ever would at any other part of the season. So this is the best time. If you can get a 3rd round pick or higher for him, I think that's a plus. And just to let y'all know, if we were to trade him, you know, contracts get weird. I mean, the team may ask us to take on some of his dead cap, or maybe we'll relieve the entire contract to the new team. Either way, if we don't trade him, if we were to cut him, say this year, it's not worth it. He would be just a complete dead cap hit for the most part. We would gain nothing. But if we were to cut him going into the 2023 season, because he still has 1 more year in his contract after this season, he would save us $6 million, but he would still hit us for $9 million in cap hit, because we'd be releasing 15, almost $16 million. So he would still cost us $9 million, even not on our team. So trading him just looks like the best answer for so many different reasons, because if you cut him, he's still eating us for $9 million. Even after you cut him, you only save a little over $6 million anyway. You're getting less than half of your cap hit back releasing them, and that's next offseason. That's nothing to do with this year. And now moving on, Chase Young's 21 practice day window was expected to begin this week. They were saying that he could potentially end up starting to practice for us as of Wednesday today, but of course it ended up not happening. Would have been nice to see him start his practice week. We see him out there doing all of the drills with everybody, participating in team drills and all of that, and we can get a true glance at whether he still has his explosion and things like that, seeing him in pads, all of that. But unfortunately, that did not start Wednesday. But if he did, there was a chance he could even play this Sunday against the Colts. There was a chance. But again, this week will not be the week. So I was really excited about that. And then so people, after he didn't practice today, were like, oh man, is there a setback? Did he end up hurting something? Did he tweak something? Did their initial thoughts on him and his injury and whatever results came back from the doctor, did something happen to set that back a little bit? And then JP Finlay basically came out and tweeted exactly, Chase Young update. Team source says no setback, but don't expect the clock to start today. Team wants to be cautious and have 1 more doctor visit. If all goes well, Young likely practices next week. Commanders' focus is not rushing him back, and thank goodness. Please do not rush him back. I beg you, I beg you, I beg you. Do not rush Chase Young back. I mean, even on the sideline in the back of the end zone before that Commanders game versus the Packers, that Commanders win versus the Packers, to be specific, look at this clip of him working out with everybody. He looks just as agile, if not more agile, than other people doing the same drill. Here you go. I don't know what it is about that video, how loose he looks, how good he looks. I'm definitely more optimistic about his chances playing sooner rather than later after seeing that video. I'm very surprised, even with the brace on, how he looks like that. I'm very optimistic about his chances of actually playing even potentially next week against the Minnesota Vikings. And since Ron Rivera was not at practice today due to a family matter, according to a team spokesman, and they're saying that he should be back tomorrow, so it's nothing too crazy, I hope. Jack Del Rio had to run the practice and run the press conference, which is something he's used to. He's been a head coach in the NFL for years, so that was an absolute seamless transition for him anyway. But he spoke on Chase Young. He said, quote, he's close, he's scheduled to meet with the doctors, and until he's cleared, we're just rooting for him. Doing a great job working hard and staying involved mentally and being very engaged, unquote. And Chase Young is doing everything right. He's showing up to every practice. He was on the sideline hyping up fans during the Packers game, telling people to get louder, all of that, man. He's doing all of the right things. And so far, they're saying he's had no setbacks at any point in his recovery. He's been hitting every check mark in his process to coming back fully healthy. So I'm really happy he's doing everything right physically and mentally, and I'm really excited about his return, potentially even as soon as against the Vikings. But again, I'm really happy the Commanders, if anything, are taking it way too slow with him. Be overly cautious, be way too cautious if anything. Please don't bring him back until he's 110% ready, until he feels more explosive than he did before the injury. But it sounds like they're doing that, and if they're doing that and he has the chance to play next week, I'm very excited. Now moving on to the final discussion today, just to give y'all an update on who practiced today, who didn't practice today on both the Commanders and Colts side to get a decent idea of who may or may not play in this upcoming Sunday matchup. For the did not participate on the Commander side, you have Sadiq Charles with the illness, so I'm expecting him to play. He just had to skip practice today. Jahan Dotson still didn't practice. Cole Holcomb is a new one with a foot injury, did not participate. William Jackson, of course, with the back injury, did not participate. I don't even know why we still throw him up there. Tight end Cole Turner with his concussion did not participate as well. Remember, he fell and hit his head after trying to reach back and get like a Taylor Heineke pass. Remember, Taylor Heineke in the first half was really bad, man. Inaccurate hospital balls, it was pretty bad. But he got it together second half, and boy, if you can continue to play like how you played in that second half, we can honestly make the playoffs for real. That was a way better Taylor Heineke I saw. I mean, that touchdown to Terry McLaurin is easily the best throw I've ever seen him make. But continuing on with the practice report, De'Ami Brown, Logan Thomas, and Jonathan Williams were all limited in practice, so that's pretty good because De'Ami Brown has missed a few games. Logan Thomas has missed a few games. Jonathan Williams, the same thing. And Logan Thomas, this is his first time practicing since Thursday before the Tennessee Titans game. So that's really good. This is our first time seeing him actually participate in any practice, any way, shape, or form since the Tennessee Titans game. So I'm optimistic about him potentially playing against the Colts because they were saying that he may even play without practicing at any point last week against the Packers. So we'll see. And then full for us, you have Samuel Cosmi and Taylor Heineke. Taylor Heineke has somewhat of a calf injury, but he's good to go. And then Samuel Cosmi's situation is really interesting because he still has a huge club on his hand. So even if he's able to play, I don't know how good he's going to be. I wouldn't force it. I mean, like I've been saying, I think moving Samuel Cosmi to guard would turn him into an all-pro player, in my honest opinion. And I'm definitely worried about him playing tackle all the way on the outside with no help to the side of him with a club on his hand. I'm definitely worried about that. So I don't know. Maybe he'll be able to take that off by the time the game comes. I don't know. And then did not participate for the Colts side. Well, you have Yannick Ngakoue and Stephon Gilmore who didn't participate because of rest. They just took a day off. And remember, Yannick Ngakoue, we got to watch him because Logan Thomas is still struggling to come back and fully recover from his injuries. And even though it's a calf injury this time, he's the one that took out Logan Thomas towards the end of last season with that just super unnecessary hit. So watch out for him, man. I'm pretty sure this team did not forget that. And then also you have Kwity Paye, Matt Ryan, of course, even though he's benched, so it doesn't really matter, and linebacker Grant Stard. Then limited, you have JoJo Damon and center Ryan Kelly. That's pretty important. And then full participants look like they should be slated to go this upcoming game against us. You have Kiki Kati, Zaire Franklin, Shaquille Leonard, and Luke Rhodes. All of those guys look like they're ready to go. And two of those guys were linebackers. Their practice report has 4 linebackers on it and 2 defensive ends. That's pretty crazy. So they better hurry up and get those guys back healthy because you saw the Packers having to put a spy on Taylor Heineke. If they don't have the linebackers, they're not going to have the equipment to be able to handle his running ability, man. It might get ugly for them Colts, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. As always, man, I appreciate all of the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose name you see scrolling on the screen right now. Again, let me know how you feel about the William Jackson situation, the Chase Young situation, and the injury situations for both teams leading up to this matchup against the Colts. 4:25 p.m. on Sunday. Again, I will be live streaming during that game, play-by-play analysis. Make sure you pull up. I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.